Thanks for checking out the Rudits and Laws podcast, driven by the Ford Ranger Raptor, inspired by desert racing. Ford Ranger Raptor has been developed by the Australian design and engineering team with Ford Performance DNA for true enthusiasts.
If you want to ask about the skin folds and all that.
Yeah, well, I'll ask about skin folds. I used to love skin folds.
Pigs out. Your brother.
This is The Bump, the one podcast SA footy fans need to hear, where the biggest names tackle the biggest South Australian footy stories. Roo, Dits, Bernie, Jars, Triple M's The Bump.
Roo, Dits and Jars with you this week for The Bump, and not a good week to be talking about the SA AFL teams. Roo.
Bad weekend for both sides.
Terrible.
Very bad.
Yeah, although it's interesting, isn't it? 30 seconds in a game, if the Crows win, it's magnificent. You've gone back to back. But,
well, they would have, if they won, they would have thought they were lucky because Essendon played the best footy on the night. There's no doubt about that. And Adelaide were only still in the game midway through the second quarter because Essendon kicked in accurately, which, is luck. But Adelaide played a poor first quarter and a half, and that's what needed to be addressed during the week.
Jar spoke to Tex Walker on the award-winning number one rating breakfast show in Adelaide on Triple M and said, how on earth do you beat Carlton? And then you come out in the first quarter against Essendon and just give zero, give nothing, don't turn up. Well, what's your take on that?
Well, it's a mindset. Thanks, Jez. Turn me on. Fair income. Well, mentally, it's got to be driven by your senior players and your leaders. And those slow starts do hurt you in today's game because momentum can change just like that. So, yeah, disappointing. And I watched it and I was just thinking, for me, who are they? Who are the Adelaide Crows team? And where do they go from here? 1-5, it's 5 years into this so-called rebuild. Where does, and poor old Nixie, his head's on the chopping block, and that's not fair. It's not fair. He's only as good as what he's got, what he's been given through the draft and the free trade and all that other stuff there. But the senior players have to drive this, Dits and Rupert. Your senior players and your good players have to step up.
They have to find a way to get into form because they've got too many players down on form at the moment. That's not helping it either. Whether the senior players, Tex has got better as the year went on. He missed the first game, then he was had a bad back for a couple of weeks. Lairdy's well down on where he's been. Smithers has been down. Hingey's been down. So
they're good players.
There's a number of senior players down, which doesn't help things on top of injuries. So
I want to ask, this is a real broad question, right? And a real generalisation type question, but it's because you've just raised this. You talk about senior players need to lead the way, didn't turn up to play, it was mental. I hear things like, we're going to get to Port Adelaide, Ruby. You said to me, before that Port Adelaide lost the loose ball gets. All of these things, I want to, you as players, when you stand there, or you say, he's out of form, when they bounce the ball, are you not all trying to get the ball and you are switched on? You want to run through a brick wall and get it. How do things like, we didn't play, the other one, my favourite, we didn't play 4 quarters of footy. What did you do for the other quarters that you didn't play? These are questions in a game of football that I walk away thinking, why do they say things like this?
Did you, in every squash game, play perfectly for every game?
Not perfectly, but do you know what? And you laughed me out of town. I tried my arse off from the time the ball came at me because it's me against the other person.
You would have had situations where you weren't playing as well as what you had.
Find a way. Seriously, when you're an individual, find a way, run harder, prolong
and the best players can do that, and that's why you were number one in the world.
No, I don't, but I'm not trying to be a smart aleck.
No, I'm not being a smart Alec. The best players do play well for longer. The average players don't. Now, are they daydreamers? Are they not fit enough? Are they lazy? Are they not switched on? They're the facts.
So when you say to me, right, Port Adelaide not winning in defence, not winning the loose ball at ground level at the moment, right?
That might be ability.
Two of you running at the ball. The other person just keeps winning it, and you come away with the stats go, Port are getting thrashed in that area.
It might be ability, Dits, or the want to win it.
That's where. What do you think about that, Charles?
I'm a little bit with Rupert and a bit with you, but I think when you go and find a player, you've got to find his DNA. Is he a competitive animal? Does he love the contest? And you've got to find more of those guys because a lot of boys do switch off mentally. They do look at the scoreboard. They ball watch. I
find that extraordinary.
But
everyone's different.
But you've got to find the competitive player. You've got to find him and recruit him because Simon Goodwin, he's done that really well. Like his DNA was, I don't know if you told me or might have been Bernie 2 or 3 years ago, if you're not a competitive player, you don't play on my side. So you need those little Jay Vineys, don't you, and Oliver.
And I've actually seen, now that you've said, I didn't know that, but you see some of the players he's gotten rid of over the last couple of years don't fit that mould.
Exactly. So as a coach, you go, what's his DNA?
Who's he got rid of?
Oh, I don't want to name him, but I know a couple of Rook.
And that's where Port Adelaide. And that's where Port Adelaide.
He's a competitor.
Oh,
Who was?
Grundy.
He's off with the Fairies a lot of the time.
Oh, he's been going bloody well.
Hang on, but be serious.
He's got rid of it because he can't play forward.
But it's not all the time. What I'm saying, a competitive beast goes out there and wants it all,
Just
like
competes.
you did. Like Grundy, just wait and see. What are we 5 weeks into the season?
To answer your question, I couldn't stand losing a one-on-one contest. That was drilled into me.
Well,
Don't lose it. And if you do lose it, halve the bloody damn thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rupert, is that fair? And then you look at the both squads, Port Adelaide and the Adelaide Crows.
And there can be reasons why fluctuations, there can be starts of games, there can be confusion, there can be all sorts of things. But at the end of the day, that's the job of the football club to go, right, is our message clear that we want from our players? Do the players understand the game plan? Have we prepared them right during the week? Are we given the right information about the opposition? Are they in the right headspace for any reason? And work out whether, if you've got all those things right, well then you can't do much more than that.
Why is everyone in love with Harley Reid? What does he do?
Well, because he
does everything.
What does he do?
Well, he's hungry.
What's his number one DNA?
I want the ball.
He's competitive.
I want the ball.
And he's a fierce competitor.
Yep.
That's what you got.
That's what I don't understand. I'm going back to that initial question.
But,
You say
but
there
he's
are
the
some
number one
blokes.
draft pick. He's a superstar.
Yeah.
That goes back to your number one in the world. That's Harley Reid. Most teams don't even have a number one draft pick, let alone a number 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And they don't have 23 of them, minus injuries.
I mean,
where you got 6 or 8 injuries or whatever as well. You're going down, you're batting down into your 30s on the list, times by 18 teams. There's not. There's not 500 Harley Reids out there.
I mean this in the best possible way, but your ego comes into it. And what you said before is if you and the opponent going for the ball, and if he beats you to the ball, you are absolutely pissed off. I wanted to win that ball.
And that's highlighted all during the week, and they have to live with that. So if they don't do that, in a good club where the reviews their football properly, they have to live with it and own it, and they have a choice whether to change their reputation or not. And if they don't, generally in a good football club, they'll, what they call, behave their way out of the club.
Sure. All right, let's get back to the Crows on the weekend against Essendon. Here's Tex Walker talking on Triple M Breakfast about that final moment with Sam Draper.
A lot of people would say, well, don't put yourselves in that situation. Well, guess what? We're in that situation. And it doesn't mean, as me at the time, it doesn't mean I automatically go back and kick the goal and we win.
You would have had to kick it too.
Probably would have, but good on you for owning your mistake. But, well, there needs to be something. You can't let results, because I look at it this way. I'm like, we're in a position now where we were 1-4 going into it. If we go 2-4, does that kickstart your season a little bit?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Even if you've played bad, you're entitled to get the right decision at the end. Now, anyone listening, there was plenty of bad decisions on the night. Essendon got a couple. Adelaide got a couple. The ones closer to the finish have more impact because it's closer to the finish and the game can change earlier on in the contest. And, if Essendon get goals earlier on, maybe they can keep getting goals as well. But that's just the way it goes.
But at the end of the day, they're 1-5, sitting 15th.
Mm-hmm.
And we spoke about some of their very important players who aren't playing well at the moment. And then Nixie now needs to make some sort of statement for the rest of the year. How are we going to be perceived? Who are we? Where does he go next with this list? Does he mix things up? Does he try all sorts of things?
What do you, as a coach, you've coached more than any of us here. Where do you go when you're frustrated? You think you've done everything that we said before
I feel for him.
You think
I really do.
You think the game plan's clear. You've coached them well and all that. What do you do to try and get them up out of form?
You look at your bottom 6 on your list each week. They're the most important players. And if you look at most clubs' bottom 6 players, they're fringy type players. So does he go youth? Does he go, you know what, this time next year...
Can't go any younger.
Well, if you've got some
third
boys...
or fourth youngest side
I need to know where Strawn sits. I need to know where Himmelberg sits. You're going to play young Dowling. That's great. I've heard good things about him. He's got to just throw everything out and bloody just go, you know what, this is what we're going to do the next month and see what it looks like. Because what we're doing ain't working. We're 1-5. for the last 5 years.
You know the article I read at the start of this week? I reckon it was John Routh that wrote it about the Crows are going to go nationally to find talent and whatever. Now, whether that article's accurate or not, I'm going to ask you a question. The midfield that was called vanilla, so let's talk about names like Saligo and Rachele moving forward and players like that, Lairds in there, whatever. Do you believe in them for the next 5 years, right?
Saligo's definitely going to be very good. Rachele should be good. How good he is in the midfield remains to be seen. How good Rankin is in the midfield remains to be seen. He's probably not a natural, 80% on the midfield type. He's more of a burst midfielder.
So have you got faith for the next couple of years?
It needs more depth. It definitely needs more depth. And getting gun midfielders in the trade period or in the free agency period is not that easy to do. You've got to be, well, obviously you've got to have money, you've got to have the draft picks, and you've got to have a side that players want to come to, whether that's from your South Australians or whether you're other clubs.
Yeah. Where's Darcy Fogarty at?
I think he's working.
Is he working hard off the ball?
He's very much like Tex. Both of those players play well when there's better ball movement.
Yeah.
Because they're more leading players. They're 6'4". They're not 6'6", 6'7". So they're not strong at when you just move the ball slowly and kick it down the line. I think Fog is doing quite a few good things. He's not dominating games, but he is competing and he's trying hard. I don't think he's far away from playing really well.
I reckon that forward line would be a lot different if Thilthorpe didn't get injured.
They're definitely lacking height at both ends of the ground. I think they are lacking Thilthorpe, definitely, and maybe they have to play Himmelberg this week. As a result, he played well on the weekend down at Glenelg. I went and watched the SANFL.
Nothing to lose.
He hasn't played because he's had a shoulder op and then I think he had something else wrong with him as well, but he actually looks good. I'd be surprised if he doesn't play this week.
But Thilthorpe was potentially going to be the big improver. He looked great. Pre-season was good, and then went down. So it's hard to know.
Second ruck and forward.
It's a big loss.
And they're a bit skinny in that depth department. So
there's stuff to build a side around. Don't get me wrong. There's some good stuff in there, and it's getting there. You know, Michalanney, I'd like to see him come up the field playing a wing or chop out on the ball for 5 or 6 minutes. See what he's got. Nixie needs to see what else is there. You know, they keep going backing in, but he's not getting much support the other way from his playing group.
Yeah.
Because he's 1-5. He's won 30-odd games out of 58 games, I don't know, whatever.
They weren't far away from it last year. They thought they had a very good summer.
This is this year.
Yeah, I know, but leading into the season, they thought they had a very good summer.
Yeah.
And their 2 pre-season games, one against Port Adelaide, they matched them for 4 quarters, and the second one they gave West Coast a bit of a pounding, but that's, lots of sides are doing that. The preparation was fine. They just haven't been able to get it done in the home and away season when you have to get it done. So,
North Melbourne ain't going to be any easier.
Not down in Tassie. It is the hardest place to play footy, but they need to find a way to go down and get it done.
Right, now, young Josh Rachele's had a tough few days after the weekend. Here he is talking to Channel 9.
The first one was just more about, I thought someone was coming right over the top of me and completely, honestly, just, wasn't brave enough in that situation, which, I'm going to have to take that and move on and learn from it. And the other one was just a complete misjudge.
Tough thing for him to have to confront, Jars.
I commend him for that.
Yeah.
I love that kind of stuff. He took ownership. He knew what happened. And you know what? Every now and then, some of us have been in that type of situation, to be quite honest with you. And
what did you say?
Some of us have been in that type of situation.
I said on the Brecky show this morning, most players that have been around a while have pulled out in one way, shape or form.
Yeah, well, just... good on him, and I think he's going to be a better player and a better person for it. And I got a lot of respect for what he did.
It's up to him now to change. Put his body on the line. I'm just as concerned with him making sure he gives off the ball when there's other better opportunities in front of goal. The one Ned McHenry one, and he's got to learn from that, because when you don't do that, when you don't give it when someone's in a better position, that can be cancerous. And on the flip side, when you do give it and share the ball around, that can grow the group as well, because it rewards people doing the hard work. So, look, he's young. He's made a few mistakes. He's got plenty of upside. So he's got to learn from it, move on, and make sure it happens less and less in the future.
Yeah. And you see it in local footy as well. You see it all the time. So I'm not going to nail him. I think he's going to be a better player for it.
I remember having to back one day in the Gary Ablett to Geelong. And
I must have called you in.
a couple of short steps. But,
Mate,
fair enough.
I had to sit in front of Plugger. And I did a hammy, and the ball's nowhere near me.
Going backwards, you have zero idea who's coming or where they are.
Yeah.
And Josh Rachele, even though when we're watching the game, there was no one within 20 metres,
but
he has no idea.
Nah.
So for him, there could have been 10 blokes coming. But
what's your take on it, being an old Port Adelaide man?
I'm going to let him off the second one. I thought he just misjudged the mark, to be honest.
Well, that's what he said.
Yeah, I didn't think
first
he got
one he definitely got frightened.
And the first one, but Jars, I'm really reluctant to say because I've never been out there, and I think it's unfair for a commentator to say, "Oh, he pulled out" or whatever. That would be that'd be a shocking thing for me to say.
I'll say one thing: for any player that can back in that situation and not be frightened, you're almost superhuman.
Yep,
It's good
because
call. Well said.
You don't know what's happening. Like you actually have to be half a nutter.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't care how tough you are.
I've seen some players go back and I go, you know what, this is going to end in tears.
Yeah.
It really will.
Yeah.
And it normally does.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep, for
But
sure.
anyway.
No, good on you.
Port Adelaide,
let's see what
Ditz.
they've got in
Port
them.
Adelaide. Port Adelaide.
Come on, Ditz. What's happening to your club?
Well,
Well,
no, that was one of the. That was a performance where I was just stunned and just shaking my head, saying, "What the hell happened there?" You'd have to say non-competitive. Now, again, take the opposition into account. A very good side, and they played. They played their best game of the year. They've been shaky, haven't they?
Best 3 quarters.
So their best players lifted,
and that's it.
And that's what champion sides do. Their leaders, you mentioned it. Their leaders lifted. Yeah. They got them up and got them over the line. But with no resistance. That's the sad part. Zero resistance.
You had your foot on their throat.
Correct.
How does that change? It's momentum.
Yeah, they definitely stepped it up, and then Port couldn't go with them, unfortunately.
No, that's
and
right.
the two stats that Port Adelaide were poor in last year was in the defensive 50 ground balls, which they're 17th in the competition for this year, and they were 15th last year. And I think scores from when your ball goes into the defensive 50, I think you're about 15th as well. They're the couple of areas that Port were a bit shaky on last year in big games, and that hasn't changed. So they've got to get on top of that. And the other one is their contested ball
got destroyed.
They did get destroyed, and that's happened numerous times as well.
The problem is we're seeing it again. It was talked about last year that we'll beat the bottom sides. In fact, we can thrash bottom sides. The top sides, we don't turn. So far this season, it's been Melbourne and Collingwood. Good effort against Melbourne.
Is that where you're at, though? It might be where you're at, and that's not a negative. Obviously, you want to be the best in the comp, but to be the best in the comp, it's bloody hard. You've got to be the best in the comp.
I'm going to make a real hard statement here as a supporter that sits over the pickets. The big-time recruits we've brought in haven't had an impact yet. It hasn't worked.
Radagalier, Soldo,
Zirk Thatcher.
And Margaret Thatcher.
I'm going to give him or her a pass mark.
I like Thatcher.
The others haven't worked yet. That's me as a supporter.
Can I
say
over the
something
pickets without being harsh? None of them are big name recruits, by the way. Like you got Soldo for a future second round pick in contract.
Yep.
Right, he was your second ruckman there, but I think we'll disagree on this, Ditz. I think he's done a pretty good job so far. Sava Radagalier in and out of Geelong side, couldn't get a spot in their side.
Strong side though.
Yes, strong side, but not in their side, Ditz.
Yeah, not in their team.
And was out of their side for a lot of it. But he's got potential, and he still might come good, absolutely. And Zirk Thatcher is a shutdown defender that you got for, I think, pick 40 or something like that. They're no stars, but they can help get you where you got to go. I think they haven't been your problem so far this year.
No, but they haven't been the answer, have they? That I think everyone thought they were going to be.
Maybe that's not the issue, though. Maybe like the weekend's problems weren't them dropping the balls or
it was a couple of times.
A couple
Chuck
of times.
Dixon?
The midfields are where they got smashed.
Chuck Dixon, was that just managed?
Well, that's what we hear. I think he apparently was crook, or he didn't train, but they said they made it. Well, let's go back to Soldo. So you say he's been all right. I'd love to sit with. I think it's Matt Loby that does the ruck work down there, and I know nothing. I'd love to sit with him and listen to his take on it, because from what I'm seeing, and we commentate the games, Soldo doesn't actually tap the ball to Port players.
That can be
He taps the
either
ball
the
a
ruck,
lot.
that can be either the ruckman's fault or the midfielder's
Right, so
fault.
something's
and
going
no
on.
one knows.
Okay.
There's no
unless you're
connection.
there.
But he's getting, at times,
There's no connection.
2 hands to the not just one, 2 to the ball. So
Up
he's
until
clearly
the
winning the
weekend,
taps.
He's been pretty good with that
Yeah.
connection. The midfield's been going well,
I
Dick.
disagree.
Okay.
Geez, you're harsh.
No. Well, you got to call it as you're going to beat these top sides, or you're going to keep going. Oh, it was okay. It was okay. As I said, from where I'm sitting, it's not okay. Yeah. And I don't think
Who did you ruck against?
on the weekend he was
Cameron
up against Cameron.
and
Cameron
Cox.
had a pretty good game.
Yeah, they both played pretty well.
Righto.
Yep. But no, he's winning. He's actually winning a lot of taps, Soldo. But they're not going to our players.
So, Rupert, the double ruck sweet Soldo experiment.
I think they did
put
that
it away
because
for
they
the
didn't
rest
have
of the year?
Dixon and they didn't have Lord and they didn't have Finlayson.
Jordan Sweet's not a key forward.
No, he
I
played
know
in the
that.
ruck. I didn't mind. Look, at the start, they had Soldo up forward and him in the ruck.
Not a forward. Soldo's not a forward.
Yeah, but they needed a tall option.
Yeah, but they've got Dixon, Finlayson, and Lord out, so they've got 3 key injuries there. So they probably had no choice unless they wanted to play one ruck and then
Play some runners on
then
the
play Ollie Wines or Sam Powell Pepper as your second ruckman. They could have chosen to
done
do
that,
that,
yeah.
but up against Cox. As a second ruck, you're up against a 6'9".
Yeah, and when the ball went forward,
when you do that,
he
Jars, you know
outmarked
what
everyone.
would happen.
He was too tall.
So you'd get belted in the centre square again. So they probably, with 3 injuries into their side, they probably didn't have much choice. I don't think.
Yeah.
So St Kilda this weekend.
They've got a good ruckman. Rowan Marshall was having the best year of his career. They were terrible on Thursday night. They've been up and down. I watched them at Nord
Thrashed
against
by the Bulldogs.
Richmond. They were thrashed by the Bulldogs Thursday night. They're usually, good defensively, one of the best. They were the best side in the comp last year defensively, but they got 124 points kicked on them by the Bulldogs Thursday night. So you don't know what you're going to get from St Kilda this week, probably, and you'd hope with Port Adelaide, and you'd probably have a bet that they'll play a lot better than they did.
Did Caroline Wilson drop some mail last night?
What
Adelaide?
she's not about Port Adelaide, I don't think.
Yeah,
Well, what did you hear?
Drop some info regarding Josh Carr.
Which
That
was?
if Port don't make the finals, he'll be the new senior coach next year.
Oh, Caroline, we said that 12 months ago.
I'm only
He's signed for 2 years, Ken.
I'm
He's got
only
another
just
year
telling
to
you
go.
what she said
hang on,
last night.
We dropped the rumour here on Triple M a long time ago.
What's the rumour?
That why didn't Josh Carr go to Richmond? He is the coach in waiting. There's a succession
So what, Ken
plan.
Hinkley has to walk away?
No, but Josh Carr is sitting there waiting, ready to go,
Correct.
and everyone knows it.
We all know that.
Everyone knows it.
But she mentioned it again that
It was in our
if
rumour
you
mill,
don't
Ruth.
make the finals, Port Adelaide, which I think you will.
So what, does he get sacked?
Well, see it how you like, but
If he signed a 2-year deal and he's not coaching in the second year, what would you call it?
yeah, but I don't think it's pack your bags, leave the club. But I think he stays. But Josh
You
Carr,
do not want a disgruntled coach at your club in the
no,
second
yeah, well,
year.
you make a good
Trust
point.
me.
No, you make a very
That
good
would
point.
not work.
No, it
I don't
wouldn't.
reckon that would have ever happened in the history of the world, is it?
But anyway, that's what she's saying, and you guys, your rumour.
They're not going to miss the finals. Port will
I
be
don't
right
think
up
they
there.
can.
They'll be
No,
probably
I think
top
they'll bounce
4,
back, but-
top 6.
I'll tell you what, though, and I'm not here to muckrake or create a headline or a rumour or anything like this, but if Port put in performances like the weekend,
Yeah.
They might only do that 2 or 3 times this year, and then I'm
yeah,
not
but
saying that's acceptable.
if it's against the top
I'm not
sides,
saying it's acceptable.
don't you think people are going to start saying we've had enough?
We've had enough. Yeah. You've been patient.
It
You've
is
been very
bloody hard
patient.
to get to that position, and it's harder. It's even harder to go higher. And Port Adelaide couldn't have tried much harder in the off season last year with who they brought in through the trade period. What do you want them to do? Get Patrick Cripps?
No, but you're there to win
Max-
premierships.
I know they
You're
are,
there to
but-
play finals, and you're
I
there
know
to win
they are.
premierships.
I
It's been
know
a
they
long,
are.
long time since 2004.
I know.
Hell of a
But
long time.
Your weakness last year, you wanted to bring in defenders and rucks. Who else could have they got? Max Gawn from out of Melbourne?
Yeah, no, you raise a good point.
They're trying their hardest.
Well, you've still got to be competitive,
Yep,
though.
and if
What fans want is have a crack. Like
That's it.
on the weekend,
Yeah.
if we absolutely leave everything on the ground and crawl off,
Yep.
no complaints.
No, I'm with you.
But it was a long way
No,
from
that
that.
was unacceptable. And that's what I'm saying. If that shouldn't happen, and if it only happens a couple of times,
The
for
final
year,
against Brisbane at the Gabba. Leave everything out there. It's a final. Crawl off the ground. Give
That's
everything.
it.
No,
No,
just
I know.
roll over and get thrashed.
That part I agree with 100%. It's like
That's
the
all I'm
Crows'
saying.
first quarter and a half
Yep.
on the weekend when they're fit and fresh and everything to play for after a good week against Carlton. That's what gets everyone, coaches, players, supporters scratching their heads.
Yeah.
But you have a look at the 18 sides in the comp at the moment. You got Geelong on top, Sydney a second. Sydney were poor. Like for 3 weeks, they were average. They only just beat West Coast up when they weren't even going. They got beaten by Richmond, who had guys out. And then everyone other than GWS going well, but they got beaten by Carlton on the weekend. They got beaten by Adelaide the week before, and now they've got.
So, in other words, we just need to be patient and wait a couple of weeks, and things might turn.
I reckon there's only one side playing consistently good footy in the comp at the moment, isn't there?
You're saying it's Geelong.
Geelong.
Yeah.
And you know what? Majority of people, including me, thought they'd miss the 8.
Yeah, I thought.
And they don't have superstars in their side.
They're even, yeah. But
They're a
you
very
know,
good football side.
the other thing I'd say, your mate Mark Robinson wrote an article about the draw has got so much to do with this
Draw
at the
now.
moment. Well, that's
we're talking
it's a
about
discussion
the
for another day.
Well,
Oh
that's
no,
for
it
another
has.
day.
If you read what he actually wrote about
I'll
the draw,
actually read, yeah.
and at the in the early part of the season, it's helped out a couple of
few
sides
clubs.
enormously.
Okay.
So
Now-
we need to go. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Let's see what happens in the long run.
Like the bump, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Now, next week, if the Crows lose to North Melbourne and Port lose to St Kilda, what will be on the agenda?
The bump
of the
will be dead.
I'm going to Bali. Righto, you've been listening to the bump. Let's hope our sides win this week.
I'm bringing my boots back.
Roo, Dits, Bernie, Jars. Triple M's The Bump.
Thanks for checking out the Rudits and Laws podcast, driven by the Ford Ranger Raptor, inspired by desert racing. Ford Ranger Raptor has been developed by the Australian design and engineering team with Ford performance DNA for true enthusiasts.